Hi everyone! In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a coconut rum cake. Rum cakes especially always bring me back to the islands, but this recipe in particular, because I use kind of a family recipe pound cake as the base, this recipe not only includes like some Caribbean flair, but it also connects me back to my roots all the way from Alabama and Tennessee. Now let's get started. So kind of the secret ingredient in my family recipe is that we don't only use butter, but we also use cream cheese as our base, and we cream those two together. So the first thing is I got both of these nice and softened, and then I added them to a large bowl. I then creamed my cream cheese and butter together before adding in 2 cups of sugar. I like to add my sugar in about 1 cup at a time. After adding in my sugar, I then added 4 eggs into my mixture and then mixed that all together. And then it was my favorite time in really any recipe. It was time for me to add my flavorings. So I added about 1 teaspoon of coconut extract, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and I didn't have any on hand. I ran out, but if you do have it, I would use 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract. It adds a little bit of nuttiness along to your cake. After mixing all of that together, it was time for me to add my dry ingredients. So I first started out with adding 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 tablespoon of baking powder. I then mixed that into my mixture, and then after that, I added in about 3 cups of flour. However, I added this in, I would say probably 1/4 cup at a time, just so it didn't spill out of the bowl. I also, at this point, removed my hand mixer for a little bit, and I actually moved over to a spatula just because it got a little thick. Don't worry, your batter is going to look a little thick because you still need to add your rum and some milk. After adding my flour, I added in 3/4 cup of milk, and then I mixed that together, and I kind of brought back in my hand mixer just to mix everything together a little bit more thoroughly. After adding in milk, I then added in 1/2 cup of rum. You can use more or less. This cake honestly is pretty stable, but I would not recommend going over 2/3 cup. Also, if you want to make this completely alcohol-free, even though the alcohol will be burned off, you can just substitute rum with more milk. After mixing that together pretty thoroughly, I then added in 1 cup of coconut flakes. This makes sure that it's not too coconutty, but you kind of know that there's a hint of something special there. If you want more coconut flavor with it still being fluffy, add extra coconut extract in the beginning. Then I prepared a Bundt pan with a little bit of cooking spray. Make sure to get the sides really good so then it doesn't stick. And then I added my batter into my Bundt pan, and then I baked my cake at 350 degrees for about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Of course, every oven is different, so please make sure to check on your cake, I would say after the hour mark, every 10 to 15 minutes or so. After about 1 hour, I let my cake cool for a little bit, and as you can see, it looks super, super golden and super, super yummy. I let that sit while I made a little bit of a glaze to go both inside and on the top. In a small pot on medium heat, I combined 1 stick of butter, 1 cup of sugar, and 1 cup of rum. I then brought all of that to a boil until all the sugar was dissolved, and then I removed that from heat. After removing it from heat, I then added in 1 teaspoon of vanilla. After my cake has cooled for a little bit, I then poked some holes with the end of a chopstick. I think there's a better way of doing this, but that's what I did. And then I ladled some of the glaze in the bottom and the holes that I made in the bottom of the cake. After I let the glaze kind of sit in the bottom for a little bit, I then flipped over the cake. The first thing that you want to do, which I forgot to do, is that you kind of want to use a knife to kind of loosen the sides. I forgot to do that, so I had to kind of reflip the cake over. But after you do that, the cake should come out really, really nicely, especially if you sprayed your pan well enough. As you can see, the cake is really nice and browned at the top. And then I added my glaze to the top of the cake. This made the cake look really, really glossy and delicious. I then let the glaze sit for a little bit before cutting. As you can see, this cake turned out super, super fluffy and airy, and overall it wasn't too sweet. This was one of my favorite recipes that I've made in a while. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do decide to make this rum cake, please make sure to share it with your loved ones. Have a wonderful day no matter your situation or location.